Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this Digital Accountancy Show webinar this morning. I hope you're all well and having a good week. The weather is glorious here in Hertfordshire today, so hopefully the sun is shining where you are. I'll just give it a few more seconds to let some people come into the room. But we've got a fantastic webinar lined up for you today, all about how Stuart Hurst has helped Marvy Lisa's business, Postworks, scale through digital transformation. I'm going to go through a bit about that journey in today's webinar, talking about the tech stacks, what the kind of main challenges were, what the goals were, and ultimately what the outcome was for Marvy Lisa and her business. So, yeah, really delighted that you can all join us. Just some housekeeping from my side. The Q&A box is open. So if you have any questions as we go through today's webinar, we love a bit of interaction on these webinars. It really kind of helps us keep the webinar nice and dynamic. So please feel free to put those questions into the Q&A box as we go through. The chat box is also open. So please feel free to say hello. And if you've got any comments or any recommendations as we go through today's webinar, please feel free to punch those in there as well. We love a bit of interaction. Today's webinar is being recorded. So if anybody would like a copy of the recording, please do let me know and we'll get that out to you. But to kick things off, I would just love to introduce our amazing panelists. So I'm really delighted to welcome Marvy Lisa to today's webinar. We speak to lots of accountants on these webinars around different ways in which they've supported their clients and how they're delivering advisory services and transformation projects. But to actually have Marvy Lisa to tell us a bit about the client perspective, I think is a really unique opportunity. So thank you so much, Marvy Lisa, for being on today's webinar. And thank you to Stuart as well. But Stuart, do you mind just kind of introducing yourself to the guys on the call, just to kick things off?
Yeah, so founder of Cloud 10 Accounting, run a small pure digital practice with 5-6 members of staff now, predominantly around outsourced finance functions. But prior to that, where myself and Marvy Lisa's path across, I worked at Accountancy Legal, so a national firm that scaled from a handful of people to about 50 people on the back of growing advisory, digital transformation, and growth.
Awesome, thank you, Stuart. And Marvy Lisa, would you mind introducing yourself to the people on the webinar, and also tell us a bit about Postworks?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. I am Marvy Lisa. I'm co-founder and CGO, which is the latest in the C-suite titles, sexy ones. So Chief Growth Officer just basically means that I'm there to sell. Postworks is an organization that focuses on work with organizations that send or receive more than 20 letters a day, who are typically frustrated at the cost, the time that it takes to process it. If they're honest with themselves, they don't really like that they have to do it. So if they're still doing it, it's because it's a necessary evil. Typically, they'll talk to us if they're on that utopian journey of a paperless office, which post is normally the last thing that they can't really sort of seem to get rid of. That, or they might be on some sort of carbon neutral sort of journey. And again, sort of the paper that Post generates, both sending and receiving, obviously impacts that quite a lot. So that's the type of frustrations that businesses normally have if they talk to Postworks.
Thanks, Marvy Lisa. So just so I understand, I used to work for an insurance company, and the amount of kind of posts going out and coming in, there was a kind of mail room downstairs where the guys were kind of down there constantly and having to kind of post out thousands of letters a week. I think you guys would kind of take all of that work on.
Yeah, exactly. So we work with a variety of customers. So our smallest customer, he's a sole trader plumber. He spends about £5 a week, and he uploads his letters to let people know their boiler is due for a service. On the other end of that scale, we work with probably about 80% of the insolvency sector, whereby if there's a notification that needs to go out any of their creditors, like when Homebase went to administration a few years ago, there was 250,000 pieces of paper that needed to reach the creditors. We had 24 hours notice because it always gets signed off so late, and we got that out. So we kind of do that and everything in between, to processing several 100,000 items a day now.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much. And in terms of when you first met Stuart, are you able to kind of talk to us a bit about what your systems were like before working with Stuart, and what were the main challenges for you?
So we were just using Zero. We had absolutely no idea what we were doing. From an accounting perspective, I'm not finance trained. Like I sort of sat on the business development side. I understood numbers, but I didn't really understand how they should come together to help me make decisions as a business owner. And it wasn't we weren't trading for very long before it quickly became a frustration. We were in the typical scenario of we saw our accountant once a year. He showed up. He thought it was great that he was turning up to our premises so we could sign off our kind of statutory accounts. But I didn't, every time he came, like for the first sort of couple of years, I didn't really understand the point of him, if I'm being honest, as lovely as he was. And I think, when I think back to when I was a teenager, my mum had a business and she had no idea whether she was making money, losing money. And I remember sat there, at the age of 17 going, this doesn't make sense. I don't know why your accountant isn't helping you. Like, surely that's what they do. Um, but obviously my experience before I met Stuart was that that's not what they do. And I couldn't work it out. So when I met Stuart and it appeared that he was hands-on and they're supporting and helping me understand, rather than just doing it for me, helping me understand how I could get the information that I needed to make better decisions, it just kind of started falling into place and is what I had hoped for, but didn't know existed.
Amazing. Thanks, Marvelisa. And Stuart, would you add anything
Got
in
a dog.
terms
I've got a dog, as you can tell, just trying to jump on the. I was just saying out to him then frantically.
And I've got the delivery man about to knock on my door as well. We've both got things going on. And in terms of Stuart, in terms of when you first started working with Marvelisa, was there anything that you kind of identified as being kind of like glaringly obvious that you could kind of fix pretty quickly, and what are the kind of main challenges that you saw?
I think just straight off the bat, it was very obvious that Marvelisa and the team were energized, passionate about the project and wanting to go further. They had great grand plans, if you like. It was obvious that was there. But the way, like Marvelisa touched on, the way the information was provided, I guess, and what came out of that pack was very, very out of the box. Zero, like even the listings and the codes that we used and where things were allocated was very traditional in inverted commas. So the first thing was just to try and get a better understanding of what it was that they were after and the direction how the direction they were traveling in would relate to those numbers and what it was that they wanted to see. So that was even on the basic like zero dex positioning was just get that to start with.
Okay. And so talk to me a bit about that in terms of when Zero kind of comes out of the box, it comes with its standard codes. That was the kind of first area that you looked at from a kind of optimization point of view. So first part of the project was, let's look at Zero, let's look at Dex, let's look at how we're using that. How did it start and how did you guys kind of tweak it? What kind of like tweaks were you making to those products to help Marvelisa get or begin to get some of the information out of the business?
Yeah. So I always think the onboarding is relatively intense in terms of the number of meetings. If Marvelisa would have left after 2 months, we'd have lost a lot of money. It's built to be, this is a relationship that needs to last and to get the most out of it. My sell with any client is always, if the management pack is the same 12 months after you've hired us, then sack us, because we're just spewing out the same guff that's never changed and never evolved. So it was just first sit down with Marvelisa and Nikki, who was a right-hand woman that was all operations and was probably deeper in the weeds, so to speak, of how the engine was spitting stuff out, of what it is that's coming out, what it is that you need. Some nominal codes needed more information, others needed, not in this example, but the classic one is you've got telephone, you've got mobile, you've got broadband, and it's like, do you need all those three separately, or can they go together? There's a grand sum of £90. So that kind of stuff, we're just working out what needed to be seen. And also they'd got a board, they were well set for growth. Is like, what does the board need to see versus what like Nikki on the day-to-day stuff needs to see, and the just the varying the reports in terms of what's top level versus what's day-to-day. So there was a fair bit to go on the Zero, and then just the deck side of things. I mean, a classic one, if you're going to run an outsourced finance function, knowing when stuff needs paying is pretty important. And I love Dex to pieces, but by default, it will put everything at 30 days due date. So just spending time over the first couple of months of going, that's 7 days, that's 60 days, that's 30 days at month end to get that right in the word go. And that takes a bit of time. And it probably, truth be told, I don't know what my release would say, but the first month or two is more painful. It probably gets worse before it gets better because we're asking loads of stupid questions. Mistakes get made. You're still refining systems. So it's not like day one, suddenly things get magically tons better. There's a lot of work that goes in it on for both parties to make it work. So
yeah,
there was a lot of back and forth of just getting things ticking, so to speak, first before anything, any bells and whistles came in. It was just get Dex, get Zero actually working the way we want it to work.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you would encourage people to do in Zero, like with the rules or anything like that?
Just set rules for like bank rules. Like some people want every invoice in through Dex, everything, even if it's like a Zoom invoice for 20 quid, and that's fine. Like if they want that, that's there. Whereas some people will, that's a direct debit, it's 20 quid, we know the VAT rate on it. Look, I can go and get the invoice if I want, but set that up as a bank rule. It's not going to affect my reporting. So setting those lines with clients of like what the rules of their game are in terms of what gets bank ruled, what needs an invoice, expense claim policies, things like that. What things we can just code up, where our VAT threshold is, because the reality is people lose receipts, and that £4 cost of coffee, it won't always be there. Do we need to chase it like animals for 6 weeks solid? Probably not. But setting that expectation and what those rules look like. And again, some clients, want everything in there to the penny. Others are more loose. So look, if I'm missing an invoice and it's been a week or whatever, then we'll have to code it up. So just setting what those rules look like. Doing as many little Loom videos as we possibly can, and for anything that the client asks or does, send a Loom video, because then you've got it, you're not rinsing and repeating. And also the reality is, if you're asking what 4 ways do we get things into Dex, then the chances are 50 other clients will be. So some things can be generic, so the 4 ways to get things into Dex, so that can just go out to every client. And then you'll do customizable stuff if there's something particular in that report. It might take a few extra minutes to build it and record the video and say it properly, not speak too quickly like I do all the bloody time, but get it done. And then they've got it for future reference then as well. It just stops that extra call. Or as our team grew, I said at the start, it's me and Darcy when we started effectively, and kind of Marv, Lisa and Nikki, it was 2-on-2 at the start. They grew quite quickly. We grew quite quickly. There were more layers in command. So having Loom videos and things of structure of this is how it's done meant that when Clara came on, it wasn't a who's this brand new person of what do we do now, how do I do it? It's, well, go and look at these videos, go and look at these process notes, because before you even think about pestering the client for it, because the answer's probably already in there. So it's trying to make that smooth transition. As both teams grow, there's still a library of videos that are relatable to them as well. So
yeah, cannot recommend Loom enough. Like we use it all the time, just internally as well. It's just an absolute game changer. So anybody not using Loom, and it's free, I think, as well. So
yeah,
everybody should have Loom on their laptop or on their Macs and stuff, or their computers. So okay, that all sounds good. And just on a kind of general kind of onboarding question, Stuart, you mentioned that actually for you guys, a lot of cost goes in at the start to get the onboarding right. How do you charge for the onboarding with clients in general when you're onboarding clients onto
on the size and scale, to be honest. So sometimes it'll be wrapped in, if it's an outsourced finance function and we're doing a lot of the heavy lifting, a lot of it's included in the first month's fee. There'll be separate one-off fees for like bolt-ons for the apps as they go along. So things like ApprovalMax and Futurely Setup and things that are outside the scope of preparing pure management accounts will be mapped on. But it's a balance. Things like payroll setup, things like that can be charged as individual like bills, if you like. But there's a definite point of I don't want to make a hurdle like initial onboarding fee when I know the lifetime value of that client. If a client is going to stick with us 3, 4, 5 years, that extra £1,000 on day one, kind of, is it worth it as a hurdle or a barrier versus rolling it out? So don't get me wrong, there are fees that go in there on onboarding and making it work on the larger ones that are for particular app integrations that aren't the norm. So if it's Zero Dex, look, it's in that fee. If it's other things that are more bells and whistles, there's often fees. But on an outsourced finance function where you're paying £1,000, £2,000, £5,000 plus a month, the value of that is soon made up. So I try and not make it too heavy. And if they would have left within the first 3 months, yeah, we would have been down big time. The onboarding process is like the first 6 weeks, especially, it's several meetings, it's several process, some around processes and process mapping of what's working, some around what's your goals, what's your dreams, some around the reporting bit, and lots of telephone support around just an email support of, is it working? You've done that wrong. That's not quite up to speed. We need this up to the speed. Where Postworks were really good was like they had a real set of timelines. Again, I think because they've got a board as well and a vision, is like, no, we want the reporting by the 10th, so we can do this by the 5th. They were really good at saying, we'll keep you accountable. We need that pack by the 10th, but we'll make sure by our end we'll have done everything by the 5th. So there was grenades that come up once in a while, but they were very good at keeping to time. And I think that's something that's important as you're trying to build a finance function and management pack. Is I see all too often clients slip with that, and we've then got to say, cool, like things happen, but then our reporting deadlines have to move as well. And that if a client is late by 3 months and they're getting their information, that does not necessarily mean that our deadline slips by 3 days. They could go to the back of the list then because we've got stuff stacked up. So it's just explaining that, okay, well, what that will cost you in terms of where that's up to. So there's a bit of carrot and stick on deadlines. But like I say, Mavi, Lisa and the team were particularly strong at, if anything, it's more the other way around, of making sure we were kept to task and on it, because their stuff was up to date. And it's like, okay, right, we've got 24 hours, like this needs to go.
Awesome. And when you're kind of like working with clients like Mavi, Lisa, and there's kind of a bit of a project involved, is there any like tool that you use to manage that, like behind the scenes?
So, well, there's two things. Yeah, ApprovalMax internally as well as externally. So, like ApprovalMax to the client-facing side of things is, it's purchase order approval, it's sales order approval, it's controls around who is approving what, which again was something that was brought in and pretty fundamental. But on our side, what people don't see is ApprovalMax can also build custom workflows as well. So we can build a chain of command and a flow for anything and everything around these outsourced finance functions. So it's really cool. It's got nothing to do with POs, nothing to do with sales orders.
Yeah, wow, I didn't know that.
Just a custom flow for, look, these are the key steps of these management accounts of what needs to go well. Well, not management accounts, the finance function is a better word to describe it, of these are the triggers and these are the people that need to go. And it just meant that someone could sign something off internally that I've done that step of it, and it triggered to someone else the review was ready and where things were up to in set time. So we use that in conjunction with good old Outlook on a calendar, like at a basic level, like 12 months deadlines are always in. So we'd send invites for the meetings for the next 12 months. So this is the meeting. This is when we need the accounts by. This is when Mavi, Lisa, you need to do your stuff, or your team needs to do your stuff by. So, and that because it's all right saying 5 working days after month end, but well, what about Easter? What about Christmas? What about Victory in Europe Day that comes up once every 25 years? Like, we look at those things on the calendar to make sure that the dates are right and fit, so there's no pressure points and it's all smooth. So good old Outlook calendar and a bit of planning. And then Dex Precision was the final one, just on flows, for bookkeeping flows and VAT flows. It's got a really detailed level of, like, really detailed. That's for the people on the ground, of exactly what to do. So yeah, Dex Precision in that respect.
Okay, awesome. So I think that's really interesting that you send out the 12 months worth of deadlines and timeframes all in advance.
Just because when you've got a few clients, it's all right if you've got one client doing it, but if you've got 10, 20, 30 outsourced finance function clients and you've got 3 or 4 staff that are managing that, like, you will hit a month where Easter is the classic one, world of pain, because the bank holidays destroy the days. So putting them in advance of, okay, that's going to be a day later because we've got an extra bank holiday, or 2 days later, is okay. And same with holidays. If we've got holidays, or the clients have got holidays, then if we know that in advance, then it's just less pressure for everyone, isn't it? So yeah.
Cool, thanks, Stuart. And then Mavi, Lisa, in terms of like your specific goals, am I right in thinking for you it was about being able to kind of bring up information or data or numbers on a kind of monthly basis to help you make kind of better informed decisions on a monthly basis around the business? And then also in terms of scaling as a company, the more as you scale and grow, you need the systems and processes to do a lot of the manual work in order for you to scale. Is that fairly accurate, or would you add anything?
It wasn't just monthly. It was there was a daily and a weekly element for us as well, mainly because our profit margin per product, shall we say, could vary quite wildly based on whether we were posting something black first class, colour second class, and the number of pages that were in the pack. Likewise for inbound posts and the number of pages that are scanned as they come in. And because we were growing so quickly, we kind of went from a few 100,000 to 1.5 million to 3.5 million to 6 million to we're tracking for nearly sort of 20 million now. It all happened so quickly. It felt like we were constantly dancing on that cash flow to zero line as we were kind of as we were scaling and trying to make sure there was enough cash in the business to support the sustained growth. So it looks a bit different now, but in those early growth sort of periods where it was just rocketing, it was really important that we had that real time overview of when cash was coming in and cash was going out. So yeah, it was more so not just the monthly thing, but that day to day.
Yeah.
In that early growth phase, we were just in it, and it wasn't kind of this top level overview. We had to be kind of flying at 5,000 feet, not the 40,000, if that makes sense.
Yeah, perfect sense. Yeah, you need as real time as you can get it with what you're doing. Absolutely. Okay, that makes perfect sense. A question is coming from Emily. What is it you're scheduling into Outlook 12 months in advance? The client review meetings, deadlines, or the work time itself?
So a couple of things. So we'd send a deadline to the client for when they needed to get their stuff to us in terms of close down invoices in by, say, the 5th working day of the month. And so that'd be a deadline sent to the client that we're in. So that's that deadline. Then it'd be an internal deadline for us for preparing the management pack. That'd be in the squad's diary. Then it'd be one in the diary for me, originally me to review it. As our firm grew, I did less and less as well. So someone else to review. So you'd have client to send the stuff in, us to draft it, me to review it, and then the meeting date itself. So you'd have those 4 dates in for every month.
Thanks, Stuart. Stuart, when you're kind of rolling out kind of work like this, are you building the work in terms of researching the apps and the delivery and training? Is that built into your existing accountancy fee, or is this a separate kind of digital transformation systems advisory fee?
So the fees, so I don't build we never build in well, very rarely, unless it's really oddball, like the research in the apps. So, when we first started ApprovalMax, Fluidly, Futurely, like there's no cost to the client of us trying those things that are more general. If a client says something really curveball that we're probably never going to use again, it's like this is just for this client, and I don't see it having any relevance to the 600 clients that we had at that point, then I would say, there'd be a charge, and we'd tell the client that we don't use it. We can go and fact find, and there'll be a charge. But as a rule, no, I wouldn't charge those. And I think that most firms need. I preach this all the time now. Fail fast, fail often. Pinch from Stephen Bartlett, really. But in terms of the app stack and development, like we have 2 hours a week for the squad to play of just and that can be getting literally in 3 weeks' time. We've got an appointment with Dex. We think we're the best the bees knees, and we love it and we know it. We've got good old Max Whiteley, my partner in crime, 2 hours with him to make sure we're squeezing every ounce of Dex still, that we've not missed an update or something's not right, and we look at our team. So sometimes time goes into existing apps of how do we squeeze that, and sometimes the 2 hours will be spent on what's new, like AI is a classic one now. So we're using bots for that. We're testing those guys. So the 2 hours playtime is just around learning new apps, pushing the boundaries, and trying to see what will fit. And if Postworks had something that we thought, okay, we don't really know that yet, but this could be useful for 20 clients, 100 clients, or whatever, we will start playing with those things and start using that time to develop it. So it's hard to do that for a lot of accountants because they go, Jesus, where am I going to find the time? But if you don't, in my opinion, you stand still and you lose ground, and you're pushing that wheel that's becoming more of a square as opposed to its circle round the way it's meant to be pushed. So that's what we can't try and stick to. So no, there's not generally speaking, there's not an extra cost to the client unless it's something really curveball.
Cool. You mentioned you're trying to squeeze as much out of Dex as possible. Is there anything you've come across recently that you thought, that's great, that people on the call might not be using it for?
There's the PO match, like it can pick up PO references now, which is really, really useful for the actual matching process.
Right.
That's quite new. And the things that are coming, the supplier statement rec that's coming is particularly exciting on it as well. That'll live inside there. But there's tons of stuff that doesn't get used on. I mean, payment methods is the other classic one of like if it's paid by someone's card privately, like that should go straight to the loan account. Like Dex can work that out in seconds, and I still see it go on the ledger. Drives me bonkers. But anyway,
Awesome. Amazing. Thank you so much, Stuart. And then in terms of when you're kind of looking at a business in terms of, right, let's understand what their current systems are. Do you do any process mapping at all?
yeah. So there's always an initial like process map in the background, and we used to use Lucid Charts for that. Was the classic tool for just mapping out like what things look like. And
Was
you
that
do
Lucid?
Lucid, yeah, Lucid Charts. So you do a process map like on an actual who does what and how it works, and that would be like color coded by like sales team do this, operations do this, finance do this, and yes or no and triggers, that kind of traditional process map. And then you would have an app stack map that was slightly separate, that would be, well, how do those apps fit into this working? And a classic error when it comes to putting apps in is taking what you currently do and trying to squeeze the app into that way of working. And it has to be very much like, okay, blank sheet of paper, new apps coming in. You know, like when ApprovalMax came in, okay, we've been using zero purchase order approvals. ApprovalMax is going to give us way more control over that. We're going to set different boundaries, different people. Let's not look at just the existing ways the POs are being done, because we are having to work around Zero's limitations on that to make that work. Let's do it the way ApprovalMax wants it to be done, and the best way to do that. And that might mean ripping up and starting again a little bit. But I see that's often a mistake, that people are too attached to A to B to C to D when you could go straight to A to D with the new software. So
Okay. Let's dive into ApprovalMax a little bit, Stuart. So for people on the call that have not used ApprovalMax before, not come across it before, can you give the guys a quick couple of minute
yeah,
overview
yeah.
to ApprovalMax?
In short, essential for outsourced finance function as it starts to scale, because it's okay when there's two of you spending money, or well, maybe when there's two people in the firm spending money and you know where it is and you're meeting. But as you grow to 10 people, 20 people, 50 people, 100 people, and multiple people are spending money, and even what the budget is, it's easy for fat to accumulate the bigger you get. And for ApprovalMax, there's a few things. So it allows control around purchase and sales order. So things have to go through the approval channels. But we can also set budgets in there as well. So we get flagged if we're getting near limits for the month or for the year and where things are up to. So it's not just a mindless machine almost that's kind of like, okay, yeah, you need approval of this, X, Y, and Z. It triggers that thought process, if you like, for, hang on, well, this is going to be over budget. Like what's happened? Like what we dive into the questions then of, most times it's okay, it's over budget. Like there's a reason for it, but it's why, like what has that happened and does that affect the budget? So it bleeds so nicely for me. It's unsung hero around cash flow. Like although it doesn't do anything with cash flow direct, it bleeds into it so well. It's fundamental. And for, again, as I touched on earlier, internally for your firm, using it just to map out your processes generally around outsourced finance functions and key steps is really, really useful as you scale, particularly if you want to change people in cogs in that machine, so to speak, as you grow. You don't want Doris doing them forever for the next 20 years. Then the reality is that people change and move on and move up the firm. So it's massive for that as well.
And how quickly did you implement ApprovalMax into?
Fairly soon, probably 3 to 6 months. Like the first 3 months we just get Zero and Dex pop in, and then that was probably like phase 2, if you like, and they were probably Postworks. Like I said, when they started, were relatively small, probably like 4.5 years ago, 5 years ago, in terms of compared to now, like they're probably 100 times. That's probably not an exaggeration, is it? 100 times more in growth. So it scaled quite nicely with them as well. Like, truth be told, in terms of they probably didn't need it on day one. In terms of there was Marvin, Lisa, and Nikki. Ultimately, they were kind of in control of things, and then as they started to get kind of internal finance people and sales people that were spending, the need for it became more and more apparent.
Awesome. And is the support team pretty good at ApprovalMax?
Yeah, they're all banging. I mean, they're always easy to grab hold of. I think that's most of the apps that I use. That's for me a crucial thing. There's one app I won't slag. There's one app that did cash flow that we didn't use because the support was really, really bad. It was dog. So the app itself people say it's great, but could I get hold of anyone when something didn't work or I needed help? Like no chance whatsoever. So anything I ever talk about in my app stack, certainly from my experience and our client experience, the support is strong. I think that's probably more important than what the app does itself.
But how do you, in terms of researching apps, Stuart, how do you do that? How do you research the apps, and how do you test them ultimately before recommending them to clients?
Play with them and plug them into demo companies. Ask other accountants, to be honest, like in the field, that people that know, like, and trust. So I wouldn't I'm not one for putting it out on a Facebook group and going, what's best for this? But the people that I work with that I've built relationships with, I'd happily kind of go, oh, what are you using for this? So we ask those kind of people. Test stuff, and then the first place we tend to test it is on our own, like where possible, is in our own numbers when it's got to be live. So and I use my personal email address, like for setting, even go cardless up first time. I'm like, is this going to work? Well, I'll pay £1 for my private email address. I'll set it up and see what it looks like from a client perspective. Like, I think it's easy to forget what these things look like from a client perspective. So I literally set my Gmail account as the client, and my firm sends it, interacts with it, and I see it from the client perspective of what it looks like, because it can look great internally sometimes, but be a bag of spanners with links to follow and things not branded properly at the client end, particularly around onboarding. So yeah, that's kind of where we start, and we probably take maybe a month or two in those play times to kind of decide on something, unless it's particular. If a client comes to us and desperately needs something, that's when we probably charge and go, okay, like we need to move faster on this. There's a cost as a result, but lots of play times, and the support, how good the tutorials are, how good the support is, how much we can peck their heads. And they probably the app providers must lose money on us when we start, and some of them just go, oh, I can't be bothered. Like, this guy's asking 474 questions, can't be asked, probably. And that's why we don't. Those that do, obviously, we go in big, and I champion them all over the place then. So, yeah.
Well, Lisa, I know it's kind of 4 or 5 years ago now, but do you have any kind of recollection over the ApprovalMax kind of impact to the business?
Truth be told, it is a long time ago. So I don't remember a great deal in detail. But I know that that's a good thing, because when stuff doesn't go well, that's when it normally comes back to me. And so what I do remember is, I remember going to Stuart and going, we now have this problem. And we don't know, like, is this person, is that person, like, we have this problem. And Stuart went, we've got a solution for that. It's called ApprovalMax. This is how it works. Well, like, great, let's do it. And then I just remember it happening. The next thing, we're using ApprovalMax. That was my experience. The fact that it didn't come back up from Nikki of anything else tells me that there weren't really, there weren't issues. We were still relatively small then. But there weren't problems. It just started working, and we kind of just adopted it.
Awesome.
And that was it.
Oh, great to hear. And in terms of like the getting out the information and the data for Marvy Lisa to kind of look at in real time or on a monthly basis with management packs and things, what's some of the technology that you implemented into the business to give Marvy Lisa the information that she needed?
Yeah, we had all sorts of everything, didn't we? At some point, so we had like Zero Index to start. We had a Fathom management pack for like key KPIs and key reports that were on there.
The chat.
Yeah, so that was Fathom. So that was good because it did just some of the key KPIs are the on target, off target, and it did some at the time. Well, it still does, but like the cash flow forecasting stuff was strong in terms of the cash summaries was strong on it. And then we used Futurely, which at the time was the old Futurely before the absolute banging new one, which is even better now, as a side note. But the old Futurely with the boards was done for more like 12-month planning, 3-year planning, 5-year planning, because over the years there are a few things around investment and planning, and Futurely was the best for doing like, here's the rocket to the moon, here's the midpoint, here's disaster scenario. And it don't get me wrong, it wasn't a click of a button. It was a good couple of days work to build that and do that. But compared to the joys of an Excel or a Google sheet of that level of detail of going, well, what if sales are this or that? Like, it could map things quite well to just go, okay. And the beautiful thing was it linked to Zero. So it was saying, this is the plan, this is the actual. And Marvy Lisa said it wasn't just monthly, it's weekly, it's daily. Like, that was tracking, not just on a monthly basis. Like, that was, anyone could have logged in at that at any point in time and gone, this is on target, this is off target for the month. So those worked really well, and they were really nice meetings where we used the boards in Futurely to make the actual notes to the management accounts kind of thing. Were a living, breathing thing that got added to as we went, which again saved us time on meeting summaries and sending them out afterwards. Like the notes were almost created live as we were doing it, which is another thing.
It gave our investors confidence as well, which meant that as founders and sat around the board table, knowing that we could just present this to investors, investors are just going, yeah, okay, great, and we weren't sort of. It just kind of supported business cases for plans that we had for the business. It just made our life a lot easier in terms of kind of supporting our growth plans and getting investor kind of buy-in. It's huge for that.
Excellent. Thank you so much, guys. That's really, really valuable. So thank you so much. Marvelisa, when you're kind of implementing technologies like this, how easy was it to get the kind of team bought into it? Like, did they kind of take to it pretty well? Was there any resistance, or were there any kind of like main challenges as you were adopting some of these technologies?
For the most part, no. I think Stuart and the team kind of followed the same sort of process from the start. It was always, okay, Stuart, we've now got this problem. And it was like, okay, we've got this app that you can use, and this is what it does, and they'd do a demo of it. We'd be like, great, and then they would just kind of start implementing it. And I think because they were doing a process map in the background, which I didn't know they were doing actually, but it makes a lot of sense, that process map in the background. By the time it was implemented into Postworks and we were trained on it, we never kind of really had any stop start, because they were matching the right app to the problem that we had. There was one that kind of just didn't quite give us exactly what we needed. Kind of when it got to that point, we were able to kind of, as part of our evaluation a few weeks in, kind of go, actually, it's not working for this reason. Is there a solution? Is there not? And then kind of make a decision about what we use going forward. And it always kind of felt that sort of Stuart and his team were kind of on board with making sure that the technology we're using was supporting our goals rather than just pushing the technology.
That's a really great point.
Yeah. It wasn't shoehorning in like technology and app stack for the sake of the app stack. It was what was working, and if it didn't, it didn't. And that was an app around short-term cash flow forecasting that just because the Stripe payments were several days behind and they were real time, like it couldn't keep up, if you like, in terms of those few days delays. So on that front, we had to tweak things and abandon the initial working, but that's okay. In the same way I talk about, the management pack should evolve, like the app stack and the processes around it doing, and you don't always get it right first time, so, and it's okay to have your hands up and go, actually, this isn't working the way I thought it would. The benefits are not outweighing the downside, so let's scrap it and go back to the drawing board as well.
Sounds good. Stuart, can you recall any other kind of technology that you introduced Postworks to?
There was all sorts of bits and pieces in the background that were running. I mean, payment methods are already pretty sharp in terms of the way that they were collected. So, like the you go cardless stuff, the Stripe stuff, the accessibility on that front was always really good. I'm trying to think what else we use now in terms of other bits and pieces. Futurely was there. And that evolved.
Was that one? No.
Fluidly, we used that for a little bit, and then like I say, the cash flow demands got a bit too demanding on a daily basis, I guess. So that was why we chopped and changed things. And even using a good old Google Sheet every once in a while. I mean, the goal was to cut down. They used loads of Google Sheets originally, and truth be told, like it's a very complicated business, and it still has got some, and that will always be the case in most businesses. But it was which ones can we chop and save time, and which ones are essential that need to stay on. And if they do stay on, do they stay on in that same way, or can they feed information to other things, or can we get them in a template form so there's an easy upload exload? So there were some things for Futurely, for example, that were non-financial that got tweaked on the Google Sheet so that they could get exported straight into Futurely, as opposed to either party having to kind of like mess around with the data.
Awesome. Thanks, Stuart. And in terms of the growth for the accountancy practice, am I right in thinking there was somebody kind of going in full time by the end of during the transition?
So it grew,
and how the kind of account grew for you as an accountancy practice as well.
So I mean, it started over, I think it was just over £1,000 a month when it started. and it scaled obviously as Postworks grew. Like, again, this is why, quarterly fee reviews are important for starters, but it's not just we want more money. It can go up and down for starters, but as bookkeeping stungs grow, the fee would go up. But then sometimes it'd go down a bit. Sometimes they got an internal person, a junior person in to take some of the things away on the bookkeeping side of things. So it dropped slightly for a period, and then it would go back up again as things scaled again. So it's not like it's this line that goes like, oh, it's £1,000 now, it's £5,000. It'd go £1.5, £2,000, maybe drop to 1.7, go up. Then like it would scale based on their needs, and I think that was quite nice. It's quite flexible for the client to go. The more you need or less you need, you can move that. You're not tied in contractually to having a salary of 50, 60, 70,000 pounds. And it got to the point where there was a guy, they needed an FD, a full on FD to do. I mean, there was pricing projects, weren't there? There was kind of like all sorts of weird and wonderful stuff then, and again, particularly around talking to investors and what that looked like and their needs, and just queries that came up that meant actually you need someone 1 day a week, I think, to begin with. It might have been half a day even. Then it went to 1 day a week, 2 days a week, and they're doing millions and millions and millions of pounds now. And I think it's naive sometimes for accountants to think it will stay in house forever. Like, the best way to go out or move the fee around is for them to find someone and you continue to support. So as it happened in the end, the guy who was the outsourced finance ended up working at Postworks, moved over and went on there. So it was he was relocating our end and looking to move on, and it was like the perfect handover in many ways. So it meant that they got someone then in full time in there to their needs, while we kept other key services that continue to grow a lot as Postworks grew as well. So, but awesome. the fee kind of went from £1,000 to probably about £5,000, £6,000, £7,000 a month in terms of monthly fees and one-off fees and things like that were in there. So it scaled, and then as Postworks did.
Cool. And there's a lot of accountancy practices out there, Stuart, where somebody might be doing this type of work as part of their current role. They're still doing the accounts and audit side of things, but they're also trying to deliver this as a service, and there might be a bit of resistance to actually giving this full time to someone to deliver this type of work to clients. Like, is there any advice that you'd give to those firms? And what should they expect if they say, right, James in accounts, we know you love this work, we're going to let you do it full time. What should the owners of that practice or that business expect over the kind of coming months and year, and whether they're going to get a return on it or not?
3 to 6 months it'll be painful, like, it's the honest truth. If someone was starting up starting a finance function and running it in house, wanting to do it, if they were a more traditional practice, because for the first 3 months, you'll overpromise probably and underprice is a classic theme of this will only take X amount of time, and it doesn't. It takes longer. You've got no process notes to begin with or best ways of working. You're doing a lot of learning around the apps and process notes as you go along. Scope creep can be rife if you don't control the early doors. And it's very much a learning process. And there's not probably a funnel of work where you're going to get tens of thousands of clients on day one. It's a slow build. So the first 3 months, even when I think back to it, I really set this up at, like, when I was at UHY, my old firm, I kind of set the digital department up, and the first 3 months were a disaster. Like, I don't mind saying, like, we lost money, time was, weighted, and we were trying to use old processes instead of new. So give it 3 to 6 months before it will even wash its face, so to speak. Like, just expect it not to make a huge amount of money and take a lot of time, but it can grow into something particularly profitable. And it's, in this day and age, I feel it's like what more clients want, and you can move down the channels. Postworks is one that's grown rapidly. There are some that do £500,000 turnover that stay around £500,000 turnover, but they still need management packs to know, on the straight and narrow, and that can still be very profitable. They're not everyone's a rocket to the moon, and that's okay. So my advice would be, like, weather that first storm and build process notes from scratch around this thing. Like, don't try and shoehorn existing practices into the way you're working. Like, really start from a clean slate. And if you think back to when we went from like 0 to Sage 50, like that in itself was a massive change in the ways of working. But again, when I first started that, I was trying to use it like Sage, and it equals disaster. So clean slate.
Great bit of advice. Thank you so much, Stuart. Yeah, thank you so much, guys. This has been a great webinar so far. Lots of nuggets of information here, and we'll be sure to send around a follow-up email with links and to today's webinar, and also some of the softwares that have been mentioned in today's. And one thing I forgot to mention right at the top of the start of the webinar, just a big thank you to ApprovalMax for their support as well. Not only for today's webinar, but for the Digital Accountancy Show as well. We're big fans of those guys, and they're great people. So please reach out to ApprovalMax if you need any support with any of the things that we mentioned today. So brilliant. So thanks so much, Marvi-Lisa. It'd be great to understand. I understand that you are starting to work with accountancy practices.
Yes.
Would you mind giving us a bit more information about that and how you're helping accountants?
Yeah, so we've always worked with advisory firms anyway. So everyone from your Grant Thorntons, A&Ms, kind of within the insolvency side of things, as well as kind of right down to the smaller practices. And initially, when Postworks started out, we were digitizing the outbound postal process. And our clients started to come to us and going, actually, can you help us with the inbound as well? We want kind of what you've done with transforming the outbound process. We want you to do the same for inbound. And so that's what we've done. So we've now, we actually just last week completed the rollout for quite a large firm, 50 locations. We've basically got rid of all of the paper that comes in for inbound posts. So they are now by sort of in practice, not just theory, completely paperless. Because of course the rule with paper is that you stop it coming in as quickly as you can. So for accountants that offer a registered office service to their clients, from the ones that we kind of speak to, if they're honest, a lot of them aren't really tracking how much stuff comes in. It's certainly not a billed activity usually. There's obviously peak periods when HMRC are sending out their reminders, and it's often a service that either isn't billed correctly, and if they are billing clients, some clients they're offering it to and they're not billing them, they've got no real way of tracking what's coming in. And so for our clients, the accountancy firms that we work with, we actually handle all of the inbound posts for them. It all gets kind of scanned in. It can get rerouted to wherever they want it to go. And they've actually got this really nice, clean digital platform that they can interact with. And if they want to use it as a means of billing people correctly, however they might kind of want to do that, the important thing is that they could specifically see, I've had X number of inbound items for this client this month. And it just makes it really, really nice and easy for what is kind of a service that, as I kind of mentioned right at the start, it's a bit of a necessary evil, of that inbound post piece. And I know, from the clients we've sort of dealt with, it's quite painful. And we kind of just take all of that headache and hassle away, so that really they can focus on value adding activities. Opening posts is not, something that it's important, but it's not really where, trained professionals want to kind of spend their time doing. Unless they really like the letter opener, I don't know.
I don't think many accountants, I don't think I ever became an accountant to offer registered office. Was not my key driver, I think, in opening the post. So it's a massive plus for me to be able to have that service. And I've got some more clients to send you actually, Marvi-Lisa, on that front, but we'll catch you after that.
Marvi-Lisa, would you mind putting in the website or how people can get in touch into the chat? Would that be okay? Yeah. Just because everybody's trying to go digital, paperless, and this sounds like an amazing service that everybody should be using. So thank you so much. I've had a couple of questions come in, if it's okay. Emily has asked, who do you use for supply payments?
So we use two predominantly. I mean, look, if a client comes to us using something else, like if it plugs and plays, like we carry on, we don't rock the apple cart. It's not a big deal. But my personal favorite is Modular, just because it runs a separate supplier a separate wallet from the bank account, so we can hide funds out, and then once them cash is there, that can pay suppliers, it can pay salaries. It's a nice way to I think from a client perspective, we take a lump of that money out of bank account, and it's reserved, it's saved for those salaries. So I sometimes, if cash is tight, do that a week or two in advance to ring fence that. There's the salaries, like sorted. Everything else, you're gonna have to sort that out, but they're the bits that need saving. So I really like modular. And then the other one we use is Cresco, which obviously fairly recently with its direct integration to Xero, like that's a nice, quick, easy one. The pro is that is, it's straight through Xero, it's clicked and it's done. I said the only downside is it's there, it's live. You can't kind of shoehorn the money away in quite the same way, quite as easily and effectively. But those two are our main ones. But we have used stuff like Teleroo's the other one, which we'll happily pick up if clients are using it.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Marvy, Lisa, and Stuart, for today's webinar. That was a really, really great session. Thank you so much. I'll just wait if anybody has any questions before we pop off. But yeah, the thank yous and the epics are coming in. Thanks, Harry. Thanks, Emily. Yeah, really great to get your insight as well, Marvy, Lisa. So thank you so much for joining us today, and congratulations on the growth of the business over the last few years. It's really amazing. So congratulations on that as well.
Thanks.
But there's no further questions. I will let you all go 8 minutes early to get some of your day back. But thanks again, Stuart and Marvy, Lisa, and thank you everyone for joining us on the webinar. And we will see you all soon. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Stuart. Thanks, Marvy, Lisa.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.